I pulled into my driveway in Scottsdale thinking the evening would be simple. The house looked the same as always, but the doorknob wouldn't turn. The deadbolt wasn't the issue. The extra latch had been set from the other side. That latch was something only Darren used. Voices drifted through the door, fast, cheerful, full of confidence that didn't belong to him. A woman laughed at something. Then I caught Darren's tone, steady and proud. "Yeah, I handled everything today. Shopping, prepping, the whole spread. Didn't want anyone stressing." Another voice, lower and curious, asked, "Where's your dad? Isn't he hosting?" Darren answered without hesitation. "He didn't help. This is all me." The words didn't hit me like a punch. They landed slower, almost like they'd been waiting for a place to settle. My hand tapped the door once, twice. Nobody heard a thing. Conversation surged again, chairs scraping, someone praising the food. A buzz broke through the noise. A message lit up my phone, confirmation from the supplier that the full grocery order had arrived on time, delivered, according to a schedule change. A change I never made. The note beneath it read, "Updated delivery time, requested by Darren Miles." A small step backward gave me a full view of the driveway. Cars filled every open space. SUVs, a couple of sedans, one truck I recognized from Darren's in-laws. Every spot taken, including mine. Somehow that detail stung more than the lie he'd just told. Darren's voice rose again, telling someone how much effort he put in, how he barely slept, how he wished his father understood responsibility the way he did. Applause followed. Nothing in me wanted to confront a crowd. Nothing in me wanted to walk away either. A strange middle ground kept my feet planted until the truth nudged me in a different direction. There was no point standing at a locked door listening to my own son rewrite the story of my life. The garage sat off to the right, the only space he rarely bothered with. My steps carried me there almost automatically. The keypad accepted my code, and the door rolled up with its usual rumble. That little sound felt like the only thing left in the house still connected to me. I crossed to the corner where the monitor for the security system sat. The chair scraped slightly as I pulled it closer, not caring if anyone heard. The screen blinked awake, ready to show whatever it had captured that afternoon. Before pressing play, a long breath settled in my chest. This wasn't about proving a point. Something deeper whispered that I'd missed signs for years, and tonight those signs had finally taken shape. The first clip opened with Darren standing near the front door earlier that morning. He held my phone tapped through the delivery app and changed the drop-off time. His movements were deliberate. A few seconds later, he deleted the alert that should have reached me. The screen in my garage reflected each step as if he'd rehearsed it. Another file loaded on its own. This one caught the moment I came home with the bulk of the supplies. Darren met me near the entryway, blocked the path with his arm, and pushed me aside just enough to make it look accidental. Before I could react, the door closed, leaving me out on the porch while he carried the box away. At the time, I told myself he was in a rush. Watching it again stripped away that excuse. My hand hovered near the mouse for a beat, then pulled back. Staying in that garage any longer would have only fed the anger starting to crawl through my chest. The best thing was to leave the house for a while, let my thoughts settle before I said something I couldn't take back. The drive to Tempe helped. Traffic moved at a steady pace, and my mind stayed focused on one thing, understanding why Darren had gone this far. Parenting teaches you to forgive small missteps, to overlook moments when your kid acts out of stress or pride. This wasn't small. This was planned. A small diner near Rural Road had an open space out front, so the truck eased into it without trouble. A familiar figure sat by the window. Rosa Delgado, still in her clinic badge, stirring something in a cup while reading through paperwork. She looked up as I stepped through the door and raised a hand. "Howard, what are you doing out here at this hour?" A shrug came easier than an explanation. "Passing through. Mind if I join you?" "Have a seat," she said, pushing a napkin aside. "You look worn out." The server dropped off a menu, but reading wasn't the point. Food could wait. Conversation couldn't. Rosa studied me for a moment. "What happened?" "Caught Darren telling people he handled tonight's gathering," I said. "Didn't mention the groceries came from me. That all door was locked, couldn't get in. He changed the delivery schedule too. Used my phone." She leaned back, expression shifting. "And you're just now seeing it?" It didn't cross my mind to check before. Her fork stopped mid-air. "Howard, if someone wants to push you out of a story, they start by pushing you out of your home." The words didn't land harshly, but they settled in the exact place I'd been avoiding. She didn't lecture. She simply laid out a truth I'd been trying to step around. For years, I made room for Darren's pride, thinking it would help him find his footing. Maybe all it did was teach him he could rewrite events whenever it suited him. A slow breath slipped out as the server set water on the table. Rosa didn't continue. She never did when she knew someone needed space to think. The check arrived sooner than expected. Rosa went back to her files, giving me a nod that said she'd heard enough to understand, but wouldn't press further. Before leaving, the phone vibrated again. A note from the supplier updated the final charges. The total was far higher than what I'd approved earlier in the week. Scrolling through the list, the truth became uncomfortably clear. Darren had added specialty items, higher-end products, and several cases of drinks that weren't on our plan. All of it billed to my card. The signature line showed his initials. The walk back to my truck felt longer than it should have. Questions kept circling one another. When did he start believing this behavior was acceptable? When did I stop calling it out? The engine started with a low rumble. Going home wasn't about confronting him now. The purpose was simpler. Verify whether this pattern stretched further than I realized. Darren had crossed one line tonight. People rarely cross just one. The drive back to Scottsdale pulled me through neighborhoods where porch lights flickered and families wrapped up their evenings. The normalcy of it all only made the situation sharper. Most fathers came home to gratitude, or at least acknowledgement. Mine had turned into a stranger waiting for proof his own son wasn't trying to edge him out of his life. As the street leading to my house opened up, the packed driveway came into view again. Same cars. Same voices muffled behind the walls. No one suspected I'd left, let alone that I now understood how much had been hidden. Stopping at the curb gave me a moment to steady myself. There wasn't anger pushing me forward, just necessity. Whatever else Darren had done, whatever he'd arranged or moved or claimed, I needed to know. Not to punish him. Not yet. Knowledge came first. The garage keypad accepted my code for the second time that night. A soft mechanical click followed familiar and grounding. A few steps carried me back to the corner where the files waited. The screen lit up again, holding the answers I'd been avoiding. The driveway looked no different than when I'd left. Cars still packed, the concrete laughter spilled from the open windows, and the smell of food drifted across the yard. Nothing suggested the host of this event was the same man standing alone near the curb. A vibration buzzed through my pocket. Another email popped up from the bank, multiple transactions flagged for review, all made in the last few hours. The list kept growing as I scrolled. Charges stacked one after another, each one tied to the secondary card Darren used. Toward the end sat a purchase that made me stop. A high-end liquor store, several bottles. A note in the merchant field read, "Paid by Howard Miles." That line stayed in my throat like a stone. Crossing the lawn felt heavier than usual. People moved through the house with ease, celebrating without suspicion. Each step carried a question: how long had Darren been crafting this new version of reality? How far would he take it? The phone stayed in my hand. The live security feed opened with a tap. Darren appeared on the screen, walking through the living room with his in-laws trailing behind him. He pointed to the framed photos, the furniture, even the layout, as if each choice were his. Not once did he mention me. A cold prickle worked its way through my chest. Not anger, not fear, more like a warning that something larger was unfolding. Families can excuse one lie, maybe two. This wasn't a lie. It was a replacement. One of his in-laws leaned in to admire the cabinets. Darren placed a hand on the countertop, like he were the homeowner giving a tour. They nodded with approval, completely unaware of the truth. Watching it stirred a feeling I rarely acknowledged: the possibility of losing control over my own property, not through courts or crime, but through neglecting to protect myself. The screen dimmed when an alert blinked across the top. Another purchase: kitchen equipment, expensive, unnecessary, and ordered only an hour earlier. All charged to my account. Darren must have placed the order from the house while entertaining guests. My thumb pressed the power button, ending the feed, before it fueled more frustration. Pretending not to see this wasn't an option anymore. Yet storming in with accusations while a party unfolded wasn't wise either. A small part of me still wanted to spare him embarrassment, though the reasons for doing so had become blurry. The garage door accepted my code again. Stepping inside stirred a sense of familiarity, a place where things stayed where I left them, or so I thought. Several boxes along the back wall had been moved. A whole stack shifted from its original place, pushed into a corner I hadn't used in months. The top box sat slightly open. Folder edges peeked out: tax returns, deeds, financial records I'd kept organized. Nothing appeared missing, but the intrusion itself said enough. Someone had gone through them recently, and only one person had the motive tonight. Further along the workbench lay a sheet of paper, left in plain view. Darren never printed anything unless he needed to show it off. The document listed a set of items: mixers, cookware tools for a kitchen remodel. The total stretched across half the page. Under the purchase summary sat my name again. A long, steady breath pushed through my teeth. Connecting the pieces wasn't difficult at this point. Darren wasn't just trying to brag. He wasn't trying to impress anyone with effort or skill. He was positioning himself as the decision-maker of the house, the provider, the one in charge. I slid the paper aside. This wasn't about a holiday gathering or a misunderstanding. It pointed to a pattern reshaping the household image, shifting responsibility, rewriting ownership. The thought settled sharply. Darren wanted the authority I'd held for decades, and he was inching toward it by making himself look indispensable while erasing my place in the process. The garage felt smaller after that realization. My steps carried me toward the back door without much thought. Each stride gathered momentum, not anger, not panic clarity. A man can accept disrespect once, even twice. Acceptance becomes surrender when repeated. The back door gave under my hand, and the noise of celebration spilled into the yard. A round of applause rose from the dining area. Someone lifted a glass for a toast. Stepping into the kitchen shifted the atmosphere instantly. Conversations thinned as faces turned toward me. Darren froze mid-sentence. A plate slipped in his grip before he caught it. His in-laws glanced between us, confused by the tension passing through the room. One of them offered a polite smile. "Howard, when did you get here? Darren said you were tied up." No answer came from me. My eyes moved across the counter over the trays of food I'd bought, the bottles, the spreads arranged, as if Darren had orchestrated every detail. He watched me scan the table and swallowed hard. He hurried forward, fingers brushing my sleeve as he steered me toward the kitchen corner. "Don't do this," he muttered. "Not tonight. Just let me handle things. Please don't ruin it." The request wasn't a plea. It was a warning dressed as concern. He waited for my agreement, expecting me to fall back into the same pattern he relied on. My hand reached into my jacket instead. The folded printout slid onto the counter with a soft tap. The total sat boldly at the bottom, unmistakable. He stared at it as if the numbers had betrayed him. Color drained from his face. "Why would you bring that out?" His whisper pitched higher. "Dad, seriously, put it away. You're blowing this up for no reason." The paper lay there between us, refusing to disappear, just because he wanted it gone. Darren made a quick attempt to cover it with a towel, but his hand shook, and the corner remained exposed. He looked toward the dining room, desperate to keep anyone from noticing. I turned toward the living area. A few guests leaned slightly to get a better view of what was happening. Darren moved fast, trying to intercept me, but the folded sheet slipped from the counter and fluttered to the floor. A woman near the center of the room bent down and picked it up. "Howard," she said, brow tightening as she read the header, "is this the cost of the whole dinner?" The question cut through the chatter. Every conversation died off. Chairs scraped, heads turned. Darren reached for the paper, but she took a step back, still holding it. His voice cracked. "It's nothing. He's just Dad, give me a second." His hand latched around my wrist, firm, almost frantic. The grip wasn't painful, but it was a demand, a claim, an order. I removed his hand carefully, finger by finger, until he had no hold left. People parted a little as I walked toward the main table. The room carried a mix of confusion and dawning realization. Darren stood behind me, suspended between anger and panic, unsure which one to embrace. A few guests whispered. A couple of in-laws exchanged uncomfortable looks. Someone cleared their throat as if the sound might soften the moment. My steps slowed near the head of the table. The printout reached me again as the woman approached, offering it back with a puzzled expression. I accepted it without a word. The woman who'd handed me the printout stepped back, and every chair around the dining table angled toward me. No one spoke. Conversations from moments earlier faded, until only the low hum of the refrigerator filled the room. Darren hurried forward, placing himself between me and the table, as if that alone could rewrite what people had already seen. "It's nothing," he said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. "That bill is just a technicality. I did all the prep. Dad just helped with a few errands." Murmurs rose. A man from his in-laws' side leaned forward. "Why would you let your father cover the entire cost, then?" Darren blinked fast. His gaze darted around the room. He insisted. "I tried paying for part of it, but he wouldn't let me. You know how he is, wants to handle everything, then makes me look ungrateful." Another relative frowned. "So he paid. But you told us you funded all of it." A flush crept over his neck. "You're twisting this. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I'm holding up my end at home, juggling things left and right. I don't have other choices sometimes." My silence tightened the air between us. Each attempt he made to steer the narrative only deepened the cracks. His hands kept moving, gripping a chair, smoothing his shirt, rubbing the back of his neck, anything to anchor himself. Years of old memories surfaced without invitation. Times when Darren cried his way out of responsibility. Times when he blamed teachers, friends, partners, anyone but himself. Moments when I'd stepped in because I thought stepping aside would break him. Each time I did, he learned one lesson. Excuses bought him time, and time bought him a pass. Soft whispers rippled along the table. "Doesn't add up." He said Howard didn't help at all. "Those numbers look real." Darren's jaw tightened. His voice rose. You think he's some saint he wasn't around when I needed him? Ask him where he was when Mom died. Ask him why I had to figure out the anger behind those words wasn't new, but the way he used them now right here in front of people he wanted to impress, carved through the room like a blade. A few guests exchanged glances. Others looked toward me, waiting to see if I'd break the pattern. Darren counted on the pattern where I swallowed everything for the sake of peace. My phone rested in my hand. A single tap opened the security feed. Without a word, the screen played the clip of him shoving me aside that morning and shutting the door. The footage lasted only seconds, but it held the entire room still. Someone near the table whispered, "That wasn't an accident." Darren's face drained of all color. "That clip is out of context," he stammered. "I didn't mean it like that. I was rushing. It's a misunderstanding." He reached toward the phone, as if he could grab the moment back, but I lowered my hand. The clip ended. The screen went dark, and the phone slipped back into my pocket. No commentary followed. No justification. Just the simple act of closing the device. People shifted in their seats. Forks rested untouched on plates. The festive mood from earlier had evaporated, replaced by a stiff unease that made several guests stand up to stretch or refill drinks simply to escape the tension. A couple near the corner whispered something to each other before leaving the table entirely. Someone cleared plates, even though dinner hadn't ended. Others stepped aside to talk quietly with the hosts. Darren watched all of it with dawning panic. He kept trying to speak half-formed sentences, appeals to sympathy, explanations that contradicted his earlier claims. Each attempt fell flatter than the last. The crowd no longer looked at him with admiration, but with caution, even concern. Their glances drifted between us, piecing together the parts he'd tried so hard to hide. My feet stayed planted. I didn't move toward him or away. A strange stillness settled through me. Not numbness, not anger, just the clarity that comes when a long truth finally walks into the room and refuses to leave. Guests continued shifting out of their seats one by one, breaking the meal apart without announcing it. Some avoided my eyes. Others gave small nods as if acknowledging what they'd witnessed. And in that slow unraveling of the evening, I could sense the ground shifting beneath Darren far faster than he could gather his footing. Darren slipped past the guests and tugged at my elbow, steering me toward the sliding door that opened to the yard. His steps were frantic, almost stumbling as he pulled me outside. The second we were away from the dining room, he turned on me with a desperate whisper. "Please, don't spread this around. We can fix it. Just keep it between us." He kept talking, stringing excuses together, but I didn't give him anything back. Letting him speak was the only way to see how far he'd go. His hands moved while he talked, slicing the air, grabbing his hair, shifting from apology to justification, so fast it felt rehearsed. "Look, Dad, things got out of hand. You know how stressed I've been. I'm doing my best with the house, the bills, her family, everything. I just needed the night to go well. Why couldn't you let me have that?" The tone carried blame, wrapped in pleading. Not new, not surprising. The familiarity of it almost numbed me. A shuffle of shoes on the patio caught both our attention. One of his in-laws stepped toward us, holding a phone with the screen angled away. He looked uncomfortable, but determined. "Howard," he said softly, "I think you should see this." The phone shifted into my hand. A screenshot filled the screen Darren's messages sent the previous week. His words were crisp, confident, intentional. "My dad isn't reliable. I'm the one keeping things stable. I might need to take over finances soon so my family is safe. Don't trust what he says about money. I'm watching everything for him. It's better if people think I'm the one making decisions. He gets confused sometimes." Every sentence drew breath out of my chest. There was no panic in those texts, no confusion, no pressure, just strategy, calculated positioning, a story built carefully behind my back. The phone lowered slowly. Darren's face twitched as he tried to read my expression. "Dad, that's not the whole context. You don't know what I was dealing with that day. Her parents were pushing me, and a piece of something old and heavy slipped loose in me. Years of holding the line for him, covering, smoothing things, overtaking blame he didn't want, now sat in a new light. He hadn't mistaken my silence for love. He'd mistaken it for weakness." He reached for my phone, suddenly fingers grabbing at the case. "Give me that. I need to delete the clip before someone else sees it." The move wasn't violent, but urgent and reckless. My hand pulled back. He lunged again. I stepped aside. His fingers barely grazed the edge before I lifted it out of his reach. "Stop fighting me," he pleaded. "I just need that video gone. It's going to ruin everything." Another voice came from behind him. "Darren," his mother-in-law called. "Can you come here a moment?" She stood near the doorway, with Darren's wife beside her, both of them, wearing the same wary expression. Something had shifted in their private discussions already. His wife's eyes darted between us. "We need to talk about what you told us last week," she said. "You said your dad wasn't managing his accounts, and that we needed to step in." He spun toward her, panic fully surfacing. "I only said that because I was overwhelmed. They're twisting everything. None of this is what it looks like." His father-in-law crossed his arms. "Then explain why he's the one paying for everything tonight." The pressure snapped something in him. He jerked back toward me and raised his voice loud enough for the yard and maybe the street to hear. "He wants to sabotage my marriage," he shouted. "He can't stand that I'm finally building something on my own. He hates seeing his son succeed. He always has." A couple of neighbors turned their heads from their porches. Someone paused while walking their dog. The noise Darren stirred rippled far beyond the party now. His wife stepped closer, hurt and disbelief mixing in her voice. "Darren, what are you talking about?" He kept going, voice cracking, volume rising. "He's been trying to embarrass me for years. Ask him how many times he told me I wasn't ready for responsibility. Ask him why he never trusted me." That wasn't an accusation. It was a flare fired straight into the night, hoping chaos might cover his tracks. I didn't answer. The shouting didn't need a reply. It revealed more than my words ever could. Footsteps approached from the sidewalk. A familiar voice called my name. "Howard." Rosa stood near the gate, holding her niece's hand. Her eyes swept the scene, the guests whispering near the patio, Darren shouting his in-laws, frozen neighbors watching from across the street. She didn't touch my arm, or speak for me. She didn't have to. Her presence settled the chaos in a way nothing else that night could. Darren kept throwing accusations into the yard, desperate to drown out the damage already done. "He's been against me for years. Ask him how little support I get. Ask him why he never—" His father-in-law lifted a hand. "Enough. Let him answer." Eyes shifted toward me again. Not hostile, not suspicious, just waiting. The folder in my jacket felt heavier than before, though the papers inside barely weighed anything. Pulling it out, I unfolded the stack and held it where everyone could see. "Darren," a guest asked, voice steady. "Why were you using your father's card this whole time, while telling us you handled everything yourself?" His mouth opened, but no words came out. He blinked at the papers, as if seeing them for the first time. Another relative stepped forward. "You told us he doesn't help you, but these charges cover groceries, repairs, even gas. For months." A beat passed before Darren snapped back into a version of himself he leaned on whenever cornered. "I didn't have enough money, all right. Things have been tight. He wouldn't help the way I needed. What was I supposed to do? Let everyone think we're struggling." The performance sounded thinner than usual. Even he seemed to hear the cracks in it. Rosa's earlier words flickered through my mind. "If you fail to set a boundary, someone else will erase it for you." Standing here now, watching Darren fold himself into excuses, turned that line from advice into truth. A long breath steadied me. The anger that had pulsed through the night eased into something clearer. Not softness, just understanding. This wasn't about humiliation or revenge. This was the moment to stop pretending there was still confusion left to sort through. His wife approached, gaze bouncing between the paperwork and Darren's face. "You told me your dad couldn't manage his own expenses. You said you were covering for him." Her voice wasn't sharp. It was disappointed, something that cut deeper. Darren swallowed hard. "I only said that because I was overwhelmed. Things got mixed up. You're all misreading this. Dad always steps in late and makes everything harder. If he'd just trusted me." The circle tightened as the story collapsed. His in-laws no longer looked uncertain. Their eyes carried frustration, concern, even a touch of anger, but none of it was aimed at me anymore. I reached into the folder one last time. The final sheet came free, the receipt from earlier that afternoon. The one for the expensive liquor, the gifts, the added items, all purchased under my name, signed with Darren's initials. The moment it appeared, Darren's legs seemed to give out. He dropped into a patio chair, staring at the numbers, as if they refused to line up with any version of events he could spin. No one rushed to defend him. A neighbor paused at the fence, sensing the downward spiral. Darren's wife covered her mouth with her hand. His father-in-law muttered something under his breath and stepped away, needing distance. The printouts lowered to my side. Nothing left to point out. Nothing else to say. My feet carried me toward the gate, not fast, not triumphant, just steady. The kind of walk you take when your part in the conversation is finished. Behind me came a voice. "Howard, hold on a second." It wasn't Darren. A few relatives stood near the back steps, gesturing gently for me to return, not to plead, not to scold, but because they wanted to talk privately away from the scene unraveling around us. Their tone held something different from the rest of the night. Understanding. Maybe even respect. I slowed the sound of Darren's unsteady breathing fading behind me as I turned back toward the table waiting for me. A few of Darren's in-laws guided me toward the patio table. Their voices carried a softer tone, now the kind that comes after illusions fall apart. Chairs shifted as they made space. One of them spoke first. "Howard, we owe you an apology. We believed what Darren told us. We shouldn't have assumed." Another nodded. "We'd like to understand what really happened, if you're willing." There was no need to dramatize anything. Laying out the facts felt strangely simple. I explained how the deliveries were ordered, how the payments had been handled, and how the story changed the moment Darren realized he wouldn't be recognized as the hero of the evening. Nothing added, nothing embellished, just the truth he'd tried so hard to bury. They listened without interruption. A few sighed. Others exchanged looks that showed regret more than judgment. One of them finally asked, "Has this been going on a while?" "Longer than I admitted to myself," I said. "I thought staying silent would keep the peace." That admission didn't land with shame. It landed with clarity. The weight of many years finally shifted off my shoulders. The old habit of swallowing conflict had kept me from seeing how far Darren had pushed. Silence hadn't protected him. It had encouraged him to erase boundaries 1 inch at a time. His mother-in-law rubbed her temple gently. "We'll talk to him. This can't continue. If he wants a stable marriage, he has to be honest, and he has to stop living off you." Their tone wasn't cruel, just firm. They stood together, walking back toward the house. Through the doorway, Darren sat slumped in a chair, his wife hovering near him with crossed arms and a distant stare. Her expression said everything. Not long after, she picked up her purse and approached me. "I'm heading home," she said quietly. "I need a few days to think. I don't know what's true anymore." Darren didn't follow her, didn't call after her, didn't defend himself. His shoulders curled inward and he stared at the ground as though the tiles might give him an answer. A faint vibration in my pocket broke the moment. A text from Darren appeared. "Dad, can we talk alone? Please, just us two. I need to explain." Another message followed. "We can fix this. Don't leave like this." My thumb hovered for a second, but no response came. Anger didn't drive that choice. Neither did revenge. Just a new understanding some distance was necessary now. Distance wasn't punishment. It was the only boundary he couldn't rewrite. The yard slowly emptied as guests drifted back to their cars or stepped away to give the family space. I moved toward the garage and slipped through the side door. The familiar tools and boxes met me there, steady, as always. The phone came out again, but this time for a different purpose. Passwords changed one after another. Banking credit lines, utilities insurance, every access point that Darren had touched or might attempt to reach. A few taps closed the financial gap he'd widened. Ownership, which had felt abstract for years, returned to my own hands. The house felt different once that was done. Not safer, just more mine than it had been in a long time. A few days later, life resumed its earlier rhythm. My job at the network infrastructure firm welcomed me back with the same steady pace. Projects waited. Meetings continued. Nothing about my work life had changed, and that stability helped more than I expected. Weekends started filling with something new. Rosa invited me to join her and a few of her friends for short hiking trips around Sedona. Those walks didn't revolve around advice or sympathy. We talked about trails, work, family, and whatever people talk about when they're not trying to fix each other. Nobody brought up that night unless I did, and I rarely did. Each step along those red paths made the noise of the party feel further away, as if the desert itself absorbed what I'd carried for too long. Months passed before I realized I hadn't once waited for Darren to change. Maybe he would someday. Maybe he wouldn't. That wasn't my job anymore. One Wednesday evening after returning from work, I noticed the front door's latch sticking slightly. A loose screw, a small thing. I pulled a toolkit from the hall closet and made a few adjustments. The card reader next to the handle blinked. A thin strip of adhesive peeled away from the back of the access panel. Replacing it with a fresh strip took only a moment. The panel snapped back into place with a solid click. The gesture wasn't symbolic. It wasn't profound. It was maintenance, a small repair in a house that finally felt steady again. And for the first time in years, as the latch settled and the door closed firmly, the space behind it felt like it belonged to me.